And if it is not, I mean, if it is not your first time, yes, I'm sure you know how they are. So voilà. So now, several colleagues and myself have the task to keep you entertained this afternoon, because I know it's after lunch. So that's why we will be several colleagues to explain you several things. The afternoon will be divided in the following way. The first part will be dedicated to the harmonization of European standards under European law. Sébastien, Frédéric's team, and myself will present you that. Then after, we will have a session regarding the link between standards and innovation. And then we will have a session about inclusivity with Ulda at the end of the afternoon. Of course, in between, you'll get a coffee break just to be sure that you are still with us. So, regarding the link between European standards and legislation, we are also dividing the session in three different sessions. The first one is just to explain a bit the framework, and then we will get a little bit into details with standardization request and harmonized standards. So just to start with the framework, if the computer is willing. No. Ah, wait. Because yes, we need to start the
recording has started.
Okay, voilà. So, voilà. That I've just explained. So, standard in support of EU legislation. So, you have seen these slides, I guess. It's regarding the link between European standards and legislation in Europe. In Europe, you have the legislation, which is the law, which is mandatory, which is developed by public authorities, by the legislator, which sets the goals. And then you have a second part, which is the how we achieve those goals. Here, sorry. How we achieve those goals, and those goals could be achieved or can be achieved via European standards. Standards are explaining how they are voluntary, even if linked to legislation, European standards remain voluntary. So law is the what and standard is the how. Then, to get a standards developed in support of EU legislation, there are several steps that need to happen. First, the standard needs to be required, or let's say requested by the European Commission, so that there is a link between the legislation and the standard. So first, it needs to be requested. How a standard is requested? It's through a standardization request. A standardization request is a document, and you'll see that later, which is initiated by the European Commission in consultation with European Standards Organization and other relevant stakeholders. So we have this document, and it's to be seen as a political wish to develop standard in support of a specific pieces of legislation. It's a document, a legal document. Then SENENSEC receive that document, accept, reject that document, but if they accept, SENENSEC commit to deliver the requested standard within a specific time frame. We develop the standard. In the meantime, the standard is assessed during its development phase. And if the document is assessed positively by an external consultant and then published by us, we can then offer that standards to the European Commission, and we say to the European Commission, here is the requested standard and it is compliant with the law. Then the Commission can decide to cite that standard in the official journal of the European Commission, European Union, under pieces of legislation. And if this standard is cited in the official journal of the European Union, the manufacturer, for instance, using that standard is de facto complying with the EU legislation. So this is the picture. This is in several steps. First step, Commission, then document, we accept, we reject it, standard developed, and we offer the document for OJEU citation. How are we going to organize the session today? I'm going to explain you the first part with Sébastien, and then Frédéric will explain you the second part. The first part is very important, even if it looks administrative, document, political, whatever, it remains very important for technical committees because this is the basis. And so if we really want to be, if technical committees really wants to be able to achieve what is requested and develop the standard within the relevant time frame, it is super important that technical committees are aware of the first part. That's why we divided that into parts. So the first part, and I will focus on this one. Maybe also to start with, a standardization request is a document initiated by the European Commission services. And it's very important because this is really a precondition to be able to cite your standard into the official journal later on. So it's super important. Then, just to complete the picture, what is in reality a standard developed in support of legislation? What's the difference between another standard developed by SENSEC? Very simple. A standard developed by SENSEC, which is in support of EU legislation, have at the very end an annex, which is called an Annex Z. And this Annex Z is making the link between the legislation and the standards. The legislation has what we used to say essential and requirements, and these are listed in an annex, and we make the, let's say, the correspondence with the clauses of the standards which are referred to. So this is how an harmonized standard is built. There is an annex which is making the link with the legislation, but there are also other elements. I will not enter too much into the details because then it's for Frederick, but this is what is, I mean, the difference between a classic SENSEC standard and the standards developed in support of legislation. So I was mentioning this. I'll focus on the first part, which is the annual union work program. Why I'm speaking about this? It's because any standardization request is somehow based, or let's say, is initiated through the annual union work program. What is an annual union work program? Again, my animation. It's a document that is published every year by the European Commission, publicly available on their website. And in fact, it's listing the European Commission priorities in terms of standards. Published approximately in February. And so they put really their actions, or let's say topics, on which they have the intention to develop a standardization request, meaning that they expect some standard on that topics. And just to show you how it looks like, it's like this. It's a big table. Last year in 2024, we had 72 actions mentioned, actions like topics. And from that documents, we know that sooner or later, SENSEC will receive a request to develop standard, and here is just an example, on recycling critical raw material from permanent magnets or on critical raw material. You have on the second column, let's say the reference to the legislation, and on the third one, the third column, what the Commission wish us to develop. So this is a wish list, if I may say so, from the European Commission. And we are informing our technical committees saying, hey guys, this is the annual union work program. If you have a topic, falling under the scope of your technical committees, it might well be that by the end of this year, or maybe next year, you'll get a standardization request on the topic. That's, well, let's say, the high-level picture. Yes. Sure.
Who is actually giving input for this list?
I'm coming to that. So, but I will. So there are several sources of input. This document is indeed drafted by the European Commission, and they base themselves on the high-level forum, which was established in 2023, which is the members are representative of member states, representative of European federations, and members are there, and they are discussing about standardization priorities. It's not only that, they are also collecting ideas. I mean, the European Commission is also collecting ideas or needs for standards in different Directorate General of the Commissions. They are consulting, because let's say the coordinator is DG Group, but they are in contact with DG Climate, DG Energy, DG Environment, DG Move. They are in contact with all these DGs, and they are collecting topics. And then they sit around the table, they get the feedback from this high-level forum, from the different DGs, and at a certain point in time, they have to match that to the priorities of the European Union in general. So when it is on this, it's kind of rather concrete that we will get sooner or later a request from the Commission to develop a standard on that topic. Now, a request, and this is super important. A request, what is it? Also, still my animation, voila. So, so it is said in the European Regulation for Standardization that the European Commission is entitled to develop requests on topics that they want us to develop. We have a long experience with standardization requests. We are at 500 standardization requests since, more than 20 years, but we receive many standardization requests. If you're interested, and there is a database with all the standardization requests that we have received so far. Standardization requests are only for Sense and EC because we are the three European organizations recognized by the regulation. But what is more interesting for you is that a standardization request is divided in two parts. First, there is, it's a bit tiny here, but first there is the formal part. It is said, we request you, Sen and Select, to develop standards as listed in Annex 1. We also ask you to send us a work program within 2 months and to report annually on the progress of the work, and the validity date of the standardization request is until 2029. So this is the formalistic part, but it's very important to know that we will have to develop a work program, meaning that quite soon after the reception of the document, we will have to say, okay, we're going to develop standard A, standard B, standard C by, I don't know, 2027, by 2029. So this is the formalistic part, but it's very important. Yeah, this document is a legal document. It's an implementing act from the Commission, meaning that if we accept it, we will have to deliver by the time frame. Bon. The second part of the document is the list of the standard they want us to deliver. If there is already a version, they will put the version. Sometimes they will not put the title, but they will put the subject they want us to develop, because there might not be a standard existing on, I don't know, on raw material, on whatever. And they will put, very important to mention, a deadline. So this is the document. What is now important is that when the European Commission is drafting a standardization request, they have the obligation to consult all relevant stakeholders. Of course, and then are relevant stakeholders. So we are always consulted, and we are always asked to provide comments when they draft a standardization request. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So sorry, I was too fast. So in that annex, when they put the list of standards, they also put more details on the requirement they want to see in the standards. That's also very important. Now, coming back to the drafting stage of a standardization request, there is a full process for that standardization request, which is documented in a European Commission document, which is called the Vademecum, which is available online. And here you see that indeed the ideas, or let's say the initiation of a standardization request, is in the annual union work program, and then that there is a drafting phase. And drafting is, as said, in consultation with the European Standards Organization and relevant stakeholders, and this is where we need you. Because we received the document at the Science Management Center here on the first floor, but we are not experts in the matter, absolutely not. So we really count on the input from the concerned technical committees to help us and tell us whether what is written there, first, is realistic, whether it's on the list of your TC activities in your scope or not, whether it makes sense, whether the deadlines are feasible, and whether those requirements are understandable, feasible, whatever. We do not know that. We have some ideas about the time frame. If they ask a standard in a short time, we can say, yeah, this is maybe short, but for the rest, we really rely on you. This kind of thing here, we do not know whether it's feasible or not. So we really count on the help of the technical committees, or maybe it's not detailed enough, or maybe it's too detailed, I don't know. So this is where we really need to count on you, and this is what I put in big red, we need you. We need you during the development process of the standardization request. And to do that, to ensure that all our technical committees and members are involved during the development process, we are establishing what we call a standardization request ad hoc group, the wonderful acronym SHRAG. So if you hear about SHRAG, you should ring a bell now that you are here, you know. So the SHRAG, what are those SHRAG? SHRAG are in fact groups that are established by the CEN and CENELEC technical boards as soon as we received a draft document from the European Commission, which looks like a standardization request. As soon as it can be one page like this, but we will directly go to our technical board that you've seen this morning what it is, and we will launch a call for experts via our members to join this standardization request ad hoc group. But we will also, as I said, we inform the permanent delegates, we will inform our members, but we will also inform the technical committees in which we believe are interested or not interested, concerned. We might miss some. If you receive a document, I mean, if you receive this draft and you say, but TC 123 is not consulted, but I believe they are relevant, just tell us. It's because we just don't know. So we will contact the representative of the relevant technical committees. We will also contact our international counterpart. If there is a coordination, CEN or CENELEC coordination group on the matter, we will contact them as well. We will also contact our partners organization dealing with the topic, and we'll set up this famous SHRAG. Usually we invite, let's say, the TC chairperson of let's say, the main TC concern, if there is any, to chair that SHRAG. And we, on the first floor, CCMC colleague, we will do the secretariat of the group. What is expected from that group? Really, that group is expected to, in fact, gather a position, gather the CEN and CENELEC position. Because you will be, I don't know, 20 around the tables, and there will be like several meetings, or maybe one, depends, asking, okay, what do you think about the standardization request? And they say, I'm responsible for, or I'm the secretary or the node chairperson, or I don't know, expert in TC 123, but I believe that I don't know, the deadline mentioned are too short because we do not have the expert. We need to, or I don't know, to broaden the scope of the TC. So it's really a very, very important discussion that need to take place in those SHRAG, because this will shape the future. It's very important for us to know and to discuss in those meetings whether what is requested is feasible, whether you have the expertise, whether there is, I don't know, interest at national level or not. So this is really the role of that group, is to collect input and build a position. But practically speaking, the group will collect, and it's CCMC doing the secretariat, collect all the comments we received from all parties, and we'll discuss all that comments, and we will try to build a common position. Why? It's because we're going to send that position back to the Commission, and still during the drafting phase, so that we can change or propose to the Commission to change and update, or I don't know, change the draft standardization request, so that it does fit better to our reality or to your reality. So this is super important, that the work during that standardization request ad hoc group. Another thing which is also very important, important responsibility of that group, is that the group is also supposed to advise the CEN and CENELEC technical board whether this draft is acceptable or not, because it might well be that there are several rounds of comments. It's not one round of comments. It's maybe we receive a first draft from the Commission, we comment, then we get a second draft, but we are still not happy with the draft, so we'll send again comments. So it can be in several rounds. But at a certain point in time, the Commission will say, no, this is the final draft. And then this SHRAG is responsible for advising our members, so the CEN and CENELEC technical boards, and say, okay, it's technically fine, or it's not fine. I mean, this is important as well. So it's develop a consensus view about acceptance or rejection of a standardization request for the technical boards. There is another thing which is under the responsibility of that group, is to fill in a checklist. So we have developed, in common with the European Commission, a checklist, which is asking, okay, is this standardization request is the time frame of the draft standardization request feasible? Is the scope clear? Do you already have standards in the pipe covering the topic? Do you need to go at international level to develop these standards? Or are they international standards, ISO and IC standard on the matter? So this is a checklist developed together with the European Commission and Senelec. And we both sides tick the box, yes, no, yes, no. And the idea, of course, is that we are all in line with this checklist. But this is like formalizing also on a common document whether the standardization request is fine or not. So this is what is also under the responsibility of that SHRAG, is to prepare the checklist. Of course, there are plenty of details for this standardization request at the group for the SHRAG. For instance, the SHRAG are all, let's say, stored or archiving their things on the Send document platforms, etc. That the composition, I mean, that the meetings are always held online because, of course, it's easier and it's fine that Senelec Management Center will consolidate the comments received, that we will be in contact with the Commission. The European Commission, if there are, let's say, unclarities also, we will also invite them to join a SHRAG, just because maybe you just need to exchange on something is just not clear, maybe they know. So we could also invite the European Commission desk officer to join the SHRAG to explain something that is unclear. So this is also something that we can do. So this standardization request, at the group, this SHRAG as something where we really count on the expertise of our technical committees to help us to shape, to change, to adapt, so that we all, so that we get, let's say, an acceptable document for all sides. This is really the idea of that group. Checklist, that's what I mentioned. It's developed by a task force we had in common with the European Commission in May 2023. And really the objective is to present our view in a structured way, in an agreed structured way. It's filled in by us, but of course with the help of the SHRAG, and of course we share it with SHRAG members. There's no issue with that. And of course, one day, because this is what will happen after the drafting phase, a standardization request is voted upon by the member state, because as said, it's a commission document, so it's the commission deciding. They just have to consult it. But they will invite the member states to vote on this standardization request, and when it is positively voted by the member states, at a certain point in time, we will receive, when I say we, Senelec, will receive the official notification. And then we are invited to reply whether we accept or reject the standardization request. So as said, the decision, in fact, will be taken by the Senelec Technical Board based on the SHRAG advice. And we are also always attaching the checklist so that everything is clear for everybody. So acceptance by Sen and Senelec of this draft standardization request. Are using the checklist, okay? This is for documents. You can see at home that. To be filled in by the relevant ISOs, okay, voila. But you see here the kind of question. Is the standardization request clearly related to a policy initiative? Do the legal requirements in the standardization request stem from underlying legislation? So this is the kind of question, but I'll leave you with the link. So just to recap, there are indeed elements that can be negotiated with the European Commission when they draft a standardization request. This arrives at, of course, the earlier the sooner. This is what it means. So the sooner you flag something which is not visible, which is, I don't know, not well, not clear enough, etc. The SHRAG is really the group where it needs to be discussed and where we can really adjust. A standardization request, as said, is an implementing decision, and it's Senelec accepting it, and the acceptance. I'm coming back. And the acceptance of a standardization request cannot be conditioned by anything else. If we accept it or we reject it. And of course, if we accept, we are committed to deliver. Yes, please.
It's just, what's the frame from when you receive it from the commission to the fact where you have to give
Yeah,
official?
I would say no, certainly not shorter than 1 year, because there are, of course, plenty of administrative steps from the European Commission as well. They need to translate it, they need to first inform the member state, then there is a vote by the member state. So it's very rare to have a standardization from the first sparkle, we used to call it, to the very end when we get the notification signed by the commissioner. Very rare to have less than 1 year, less than 1 year. And it also depends on the number of round of comments. Because if it is something a bit touchy, we can have, several rounds of comments, and it's at least 1 month to comments. I would say 1 year to 1 year and a half.
My question to that before is that the member states need to agree, approve it. Is this then done that by the national standardization bodies or by national committees?
It depends on the national.
Is this weighted?
No.
Who's doing this?
So it's at the so at the European Commission level, there is a standing committee, or it's a member states committee, which is called the Committee on Standard, which is the committee dealing with everything related to standardization. And so depending on the national structure, because, it depends, the countries, it can be, the member state can be represented by a national standardization bodies, but in other countries, they can be represented by ministries. So it depends a bit. It's not, and to be very precise, at the Committee of Standards level, we say they vote, but they in fact formulate an opinion, which is positive or negative. And there is also a kind of subtleties. I don't think that the regulation says that it needs to be approved by the majority, etc. But of course, if the Commission sees that there are, I don't know, 5 member states saying, not okay, they will revise the version. And we had the case that after, when they noticed that 5 member states were not in favor, they revised it.
Can I just,
Oui.
I have a situation where they revised.
Oui.
But then the timeframes were dramatically changed and very short. As if they were a bit annoyed and wanted to proceed, even though they didn't know.
Yeah.
Is that the usual case, or was that an exception?
To be very transparent, the time frame they put are shorter and shorter. So of course, by default, we are always asking an extended time frame that what is put there, but we not always manage to get that extent. Yes, so that was point of attention. So then, okay, let's imagine we get a standardization request, send and say accepted. Okay, what's the next step? I mentioned that in the first part of the standardization request, there are some political legalistic consideration, which was the development of a work program, an annual report, and the final report, and a validity date of the standardization request. So indeed, for each standardization request, we will be requested, SENSEC will be requested to send a work program. As said, is the list of standards that we will develop. It will develop under that standardization request, so it will be EN 123, and we will develop that by, I don't know, 2027. Or sometimes even the project is not yet created, no problem, we put EN XXX, the title, and new work item to be launched by, I don't know, end of this year. CCMC is launching, is collecting that, is gathering the info. But the input, of course, we have our database, but our database might not be granular enough. So we will contact the technical committee and say, hey, my friend, we need your help. Give us a little bit more granularity to the info, which is in the database. And if the new work item is not created, of course, it will not appear in our database, but maybe that you're going to create that by the end of the year. So you need to help us for that. The same for the annual report. Easy for us. We will, push on the button and our database will give us the info, but still better. So we will send you the, let's say, the report, and we say, please help us to complement, or if you know when when the next step for this standard will take place, tell us, because we might not, I mean, our database might not be updated yet because you just had your, I don't know, plenary meeting yesterday, and so we need your help. We really need your input, but we are triggering the exercise. Of course, always best if you know as well, but we will trigger the exercise and say, hey, we need your help. This is also very important for you to know that there is a standardization request on any of your topic, because when you create a new work item, you need to link your new work item to this standardization request and to the pieces of legislation connected to it. So is this something you know, if you are dealing with a standard in support of legislation? If, for instance, let's imagine you have a standardization request for your technical committee, you send a work program, and then 6, 8, 12 months later, you realize that we might not be on time, or we do not manage to find the right experts to join our group. Please put that info or tell us that, so that when doing the annual report, we can add that to our letter to the European Commission. We'll say, as you can see in that report, I don't know, EN 123 will be late because we lack expertise and we have to launch, I don't know, a new working group, or we receive 500 comments during the inquiry, so we will not be able to deliver the vote by the time frame mentioned. So please tell us. We need to know, because then we can inform the Commission. And let's imagine we are not, I mean, the technical committees are not in a position to deliver the standard by the requested date. We will have to inform the Commission. So the sooner we know, the better, because it might well be that the Commission will say, yeah, indeed. So let's amend the standardization request and let's postpone, or I don't know, add a new time frame to the standard tool that we were requested. It happens. Of course, an amendment to a standardization process is a full process again. So we are going to a shrug and comments, ping pong, until we get an agreed document. So this is feasible, but we need to know as soon as possible that we will be short of time, or I don't know. I said we have 500 comments to the inquiry, so we will not be able to skip the vote, so we will not be able to follow the initial time frame. So the secret, it's not the secret. The message here is, please contact us as soon as you know. The useful links. This is for your homework on when you're back. if you have a bit of time. So this is what I have taught, but in full of text. And I believe that, if you need anything regarding standardization requests, please contact your project manager or me, but always best your project manager, because they know the topic much more than I do, but still, I'm happy to help if I can. Because we can help and we can give some guidance. So that's the message. Also get in contact with us. And I will, I don't know, maybe you have a question for me on that. If not, don't worry. I will not disappear, but yes.
Is there also standardization requests coming out of Europe that does not per definition lead to a harmonized system?
Alors,
But you didn't mention that, but there are many non-harmonized systems.
absolutely. So there are several. So there are standardization requests asking for the development of standards that will be cited in the official journal, but not only. There are standardization requests replying or in support of pieces of legislation which are not necessarily even a directive. Can be about, I don't know, climate change, or I don't know what. Yeah.
Circular Plastic Alliance.
Voilà. For instance.
The Commission had an initiative that is called Circular Plastic Alliance, which will make sure to increase the uptake of recycled plastic into new products. And they basically then made a standardization request requesting SAM and the TC for plastics to start develop standards to support this initiative.
Yeah, and the difference, the difference is the first step is the same. It's just that standards are not assessed by an external consultant and does not have to have an Annex Z, because the Annex Z is for ensuring the link for citation. But we do have plenty of standard, the Plastic Alliance, the smart grids. We are also we have a draft on climate change, which will not be necessarily in support of the climate law. So I mean, but but let's say that the first part is the same. We need your involvement in the development of the standardization request. That's what I mean. Yes. Oula, yeah.
Is it possible to not accept?
It is possible. Ah. Wait, I'm just it is possible, but not desirable, because we all want the same. We want an acceptable document for all parties, because usually the Commission priorities, the Commission legislation, in any case, the citizen or the companies will have to be in line with that legislation. So we would prefer to have a standard standards. So we all want to, but yes, we can reject the standardization request, and then we will never be able to offer standard in support of that pieces of legislation. That's the problem. Or someone else can develop the standards, but we can reject. Or in some cases, we reject the standardization request, and that obliges the European Commission to start a new one, a revised version. And again, with commenting cycles. Yeah.
Don't hit the deadlines.
As long as we have good justification not to accept or not to be able to manage the deadline, is fine. That's the answer.
But before the ultimate.
Remember. So, let's jump to the next one. Please, Sebastian, make the link.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So I'm here to speak about the funding requests that are linked to standardization requests, and you will see that there is a link as well with the annual union work program and the standardization request. So first of all, it's about the legal framework, but I want to keep everyone here awake, so we need to pass through it in detail. It's just for your reference if needed. And these are the rules we are bound to. First of all, the regulation 1025. And then we are bound to the SMP regulation, where from where the budget is coming from. And then we have the big Bible of the EU financial regulation, where it is the point of reference for the principle and procedure for governing the establishment, implementation, control of the EU budget. And we have also the multi or mono beneficiary grant agreement that is signed between the ESO and the European Commission. Here, what we try to do is making a kind of parallel between the normal process of the drafting of the annual union work program and the standardization requests that come after, and the opinion from the cost that we just talked about, and the notification from the SREC, and the possible approval from Sensenelec, where we have 1 month to approve. In parallel, you will see that how works AISMEA and DG GROW. So AISMEA is the agency in charge of dealing with the grant agreements and so on. How do they work? Is that they consult DG GROW to establish a list of topics that are in the annual work program, and for which they would like to support us with a possible EU funding. And as you can see here, generally when the annual union work program is published in February, They start to draft that list, and EISMEA, this agency in charge, publish a call for proposal. So it's a restricted call, so only the ESOs, the 3 ESOs can answer. And generally, there is no conflict of interest because we are in charge of, Senelec is in charge of the technique of electricity things, and ETSI about telecommunication. So there is no conflict of interest in that. But we receive generally more or less 12 weeks to answer with a proposal, and then, as you can see, the Commission and EISMEA assess this proposal, and if evaluated positively, we can have a grant agreement signed within 5 or 6 months after the proposal was submitted. Why I start by this flow? Because you can see here that we could have a gap between the start date of the standardization request and the possible funding that we request for it to support the activities. And we will talk about afterwards about the kind of measure we can take to try to reduce that gap.
Is it only one call per year?
No, I come with meningitis. So the flow that is here is mainly for the first call of the year, because the first call of the year is the list of topics is mainly extracted from the AUWP, but the second and the third are generally for the topics that have not been answered, and they put again the same topics if we are interested by. So as I said, it's a restricted call for proposals, so it is addressed to the 3 ESOs only. So it's not published on the website from the Commission and so on. So there is no competition in these calls, because we are recognized in the regulation 2025 as ESO, and they have to pass through us. There are generally 2 to 3 calls a year. So the first one is generally in March, after the publication of the AUWP and after the DGBO received the annual budget. And the second and the third can change, but it's also generally in July, around July and October. Yeah.
So I noticed the one that was out now in October.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that you need to send in to that application already on the 2nd of December. So that's a very short time frame to send in an application, I think.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, because we receive from the Commission more or less 12 weeks, but we try to draft a planning with our members to draft the proposal. But first of all, we try to see with all members who would be interested to jump in. So this takes time. So generally we give more or less 2 weeks to confirm the interest in the topic. And then we start to put people together to work on a joint proposal. And members have generally more or less 3 to 4 weeks to draft the proposals. And then we ask, for example, here in the ongoing, we ask for the 2nd of December to be able to assess the proposal. We make also a review of the proposal, we make comments, we are checking if it's in line with the objective of the call, in line with these the standardization request or possible legislation and so on. Or we make suggestion, or also if we think that maybe there are aspects that need to be covered. Then it takes generally 1 to 2 weeks, and then there is a kind of back and forth to reach a good quality documents to be sent to the Commission. And here, we don't have to forget is that there were 2 weeks of Christmas break as well. So this shortened the time frame as well.
But the thing you just mentioned, is that done before the application is coming out, or is it actually also included in these very short time span?
No, this is included. So we do that once we receive the call for proposal from EISMEA. So it is included in the 12 weeks we receive from them. And as I already mentioned earlier, the topics are mainly extracted from the annual work program, at least for the first call of the year. Just to inform you that there is also a possibility to propose brand new topics to the Commission that were not listed in the AUWP. So for that, we ask members to develop a scoping paper to propose the topics, and that we would like to see in the next call for proposal, as we receive generally end of the year, we receive the planning for the year after. We know more or less when the calls will be issued. What we ask generally as well is that the non-priorities projects, as we call them, because can be a priority for you, but maybe not for the Commission. We always ask the support from the EC desk officer, because if we start with the drafting of the proposal and so on without the support of the EC desk officer, then we risk to put a lot of resource in drafting everything for nothing. So, and normally when we have this discussion with the EC desk officer and we submit the scoping paper to the Commission, and then the EC desk officer will communicate with DG Grow, and if we have their support, then normally we should have this topic included in the next call for proposal. This is also for you to know, because as I mentioned when I showed the flow, there is a risk of gap between the standardization request and the start date of the standardization request and the grant agreement if EU funding would be needed to start the activities. So first of all, as we mentioned, there is a checklist to be filled in with the standardization request, and EU funding need is listed as a critical element there. So if you identify already at that time that there would be a need of EU funding, then mention it, because it allows the Commission to know as well very early in the process. When you will negotiate with the Commission about the standardization request and about the deadlines, maybe it's good also to consider the time needed to prepare and to draft the proposals, because as we saw earlier in the flow, it takes generally between 7 and 10 months from the moment the call is issued to the signature of the grant agreement. So we can lose their 7 months without starting the activities and so on. So that's good to inform the EC desk officer that is not always aware of the funding process, that we will need time to develop this. Another thing is that what is relatively good to know and to do is that once we have a quite stable standardization request in place, even if it was not sent to COS yet, maybe start already developing a scoping paper. So a scoping paper can be for 2 different things, either for proposing a brand new topic, or to ensure that when the call will be issued, it will not be under the conditions only from the Commission. We can prepare a scoping paper with the objective we desire and with the possible amounts that we would need, so funding that we would need, because sometimes it happens already in the past that the Commission consider not enough money for the activities that we want to start. So this is good to do, I think. Yep.
How is a consultant
chosen? How do we know we're getting the right consultant to help us do the work?
I don't follow. Could you? So
No, you. No, yeah. Right. Sorry. You are mentioning consultant, you mean consultant assessing the standards? What do you mean you mean consultant?
Yeah, supporting so if the committee is writing some of the document, who supports them to make sure that everything is right with what they're doing? Does that make sense? So we have that experience, but how do you, is there?
Or to fund experts to join your work.
Yeah.
Ah.
okay.
Forget the first part of the question.
Well, getting the right people, that's what I mean.
Ah, ouais. Que dans le contexte du coup, pour des sélections, tout ça.
Ah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. First of all, you have to know that a technical committee is not a legal entity. So in any way, you have to pass through your NSBs or LC to make the request. And to have everyone involved, the people you want involved, then people from the NSBs are considered as affiliated entities of SEN or SENELEC, and then can be funded without any procurement process. Anyone that is not on the payroll of an NSB or ANC is considered by the Commission as a subcontractor. Subcontractor means procurement process. So if you have experts in the TCs that want to participate to a proposal, then they will need to be procured by the NSBs. Does it answer your question?
I will talk to you separately.
Okay.
But the application form is always the same, or is it different application forms depending on the topic or so on?
The template, you mean?
Yes,
No, the template is the same. It's always the same. We always share the templates before consulting our members, because it can change because we receive the templates via the commission, via the platform of the commission, the submission platform. But it didn't change for a few months now.
Or expecting a call
And for you to know as well, all our NSBs have access to all proposals we submitted in the past. So you can take example from our proposal as well. So it's a good practice, I think. And so the fourth one, we can at a level of SEN and SENELEC as a legal entity, I mean, so at CCMC, when we approve the standardization request via our approval letter, we can mention as well that we would need some funds to do the activities. Bearing in mind that it cannot be a precondition of the acceptance. Huh? That's what Catherine said earlier. We cannot precondition, like we cannot say we will do it if we receive funds. No, we cannot. But we can say we will do it, but we would need funds. it's slightly different, but and the fifth one, there is also a possibility that the Commission give us, is that we can ask a retroactivity of the funding as of the 1st of January of the call year. So when I say present year, this is the call year. So if the last call was issued now in October, so we can ask a retroactivity as of 1st of January 2024 for these for the topics we will propose. I think that's it from my side. If you want to contact us, myself and my colleague Anna will be there to assist if needed, and you can contact us via the functional mailbox that is here mentioned. Any other question?
Don't worry, you can ask a question during the coffee break, which is not now. No. But keep your question in mind, because now we need to jump into the next session. Attends, oui, non, I'm just opening, tick, tick. Voilà, which is a session from Frederic, which will focus on the, I don't know whether you remember my graph, which is in two parts, and it's the below part. So, nice.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're still following. And sorry for what is coming. We have a lot of information in 45 minutes. We don't want you to miss the coffee break, so we will try to be as efficient as possible. So I'm Frédéric Blanao. I'm the manager of the Harmonized Standard Compliance team. I'm together with Anda and Mauro. And Anda and Mauro are the ones that are responsible for most of the quality checks that we perform within CCMC. So the quality checks are performed by CCMC in general, but we manage around 80% of the quality check, and we will come to that in the presentation. So yeah, the agenda for this afternoon, we will talk about the innovative process for homegrown harmonized standard. That's a new process that was approved 1 year ago. There was a new process as well for harmonized standard developed at international level that was approved 7 months ago. Third item will be the CCMC quality check. That is a key element in these new processes. And there will be a very short point about A deviations in harmonized standards. You have a glossary because at CCMC we love using acronyms, so here you have them when you go back to the slides later. So I will start with the new process for homegrown harmonized standard. This new process was developed. We started working on it 2 years ago, and it was approved last year. This process was created because we saw it was challenging to get a compliant assessment outcome at the end of a development phase of a harmonized standard. So we created this process to help address that. And the ultimate goal of the process is to improve the timely delivery of compliant harmonized standards, and hopefully to help the European Commission with a timely citation, timely listing in the official journal. The innovative process has two main pillars, is based mainly on two pillars. That's the mature draft concept. The mature draft is a draft that is ready to be circulated for inquiry. So again, I'm talking about homegrown projects. A draft that is ready to be circulated for inquiry, but instead of submitting it to the inquiry, it goes through the CCMC quality check, second pillar, and the mature draft assessment. There used to be the possibility to have a first working draft assessment. It was not mandatory in the previous process, but it was highly recommended. The first working draft assessment is not possible anymore, but you still can have a first working draft circulation if needed. And then the second pillar is the CCMC quality check. This is a check that is done in CCMC by project managers here. And the ultimate goal is to help you, technical bodies, identify in your draft or the linked annexes elements that could potentially lead to a lack of compliance assessment. In the part dedicated to the quality check, Anda will present you the main reasons for lack of compliance. And with that, it helps us check your draft and help you identify elements that could be problematic in-house assessments. And for performing the quality check, we use the common checklist as a support document, the same template that is used by the HAS consultant when they are performing their HAS assessments. Yes.
This first working draft circulation is still possible. That means we can circulate with all within all NSBs, and we can collect comments.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. And yes, if you have questions, please, let's make it a conversation. Let's not wait until the end. Yeah, I know. Scary, I know. So this is the complete timeline for the development of homegrown harmonized standard. I wish I could stand to show you. Can I move the mouse? Yes, maybe I can. So, as I was saying, the innovative process based on two main pillars. The mature draft, so it's the draft that will be submitted for the quality check, that the very first step in the development, and then the mature draft that will be submitted for the mature draft assessment. So this is the first part of the flex development. You saw the flex this morning, but in the context of a harmonized standard within the innovative process, we have the flex as well, but here it is recommended that you allocate 50 weeks for the first part. I know this morning you have been told that you can do 34, but for the homegrown harmonized standard, it is recommended to use 50 weeks for part A and then 18 weeks for the remaining parts. And you know as well, probably, that you can request for a 9 months tolerance if at the end you don't have time. So, first part, when the mature draft is ready, you have to submit it to CCMC for the CCMC quality check. We have 3 weeks to perform the quality check and to give you a report on our findings. Then you have 4 weeks to update the draft, to address our comments, and submit your updated draft to us for the mature draft assessment. After the mature draft assessment, you can still have some time to address the comments from the HAS consultants before submitting your draft for the inquiry phase. For the formal vote part, it's the same principle. Quality check has to be performed on the pre-formal vote. We call it pre-formal vote draft, so that is a draft that is ready to be circulated for formal vote. We submit the comments back to you, and then we request the pre-formal vote assessment. If there's a lack of compliance still at formal vote, you have the possibility to request an LCA, that is a last confirmatory assessment, before you submit your draft for the formal vote. In the previous process, you could request the LCA after the formal vote, but in this new process, it's key to remember that the LCA has to be requested before the draft is submitted for formal vote. And let's say you have a compliant assessment, it goes through the formal vote ballot, positive vote, editing and stuff, and at the end, the standard is made available, offered for citation, and hopefully cited in the official journal. And there we close the loop where we started with the standardization request until the harmonized standard is ready, offered for citation to the European Commission, and finally listed in the official journal. And once listed in the official journal, the document gives presumption of conformity. Any question on that?
Just out of interest, if this last step of publication, is that also the point in time where the standard is added to the list that the EU has for all their directives and regulations that list the harmonized standards below it?
Yes, so when the standard is ready to be published, CEL and CENELEC makes it available. And so the national members, they take it and they publish it at national level. And at that moment, CEL and CENELEC offers the standards to the European Commission. And then the European Commission will assess if indeed it complies with the regulation. And if it does, they will list it in the official journal of the European Union. And once listed in the official journal, once cited in the official journal, then yes, it will give presumption of conformity.
Yeah, but do they then also update their list?
Yes.
Lately, I was checking the list of, I think, LVD, it was 2022 edition.
No, they have listed some references, I think a few weeks ago. So probably the one you checked is not updated. But they have listed LVD standards this year. So the list has, as soon as they have a new listing, they update the list. Yes. As soon as there's a new listing, they do update the list. Yeah. Yes.
First one is, if they're coming up a lot of regulations, specifically talking about Cyber Resilience Act, and many comes at the same time. So when do we need to ask you for a CMC check for our standards? How much in advance? need to know this?
So for the CCMC quality check, you mean? Yeah, so you have to do it when your draft is ready to be circulated for inquiry.
And we
Because-
don't need to tell you in advance when.
No.
this-
No, come to us and
And can you also come give us an update in our TC meeting on this topic to all?
your project manager will give you an update. And we'll be happy to give you an update on that. And if you have specific questions, come to us and we will help. Yeah. Yes?
Homegrown exactly mean? So if I have an EN ISO and assembly, is it homegrown as well?
Well, normally, homegrown is a standard that is developed in Europe, only in Europe, with no links to international work. But I know there are some weird cases where it's parallel with ISO, but with a cell lead, and so yeah, we have to see for cases like that. But here we really focus on simple case, homegrown, only developed at a European level.
Assembly, but if you can also project and then just come to the quality check and ask, hey, I know it's not really homegrown, but we'll check anyway.
We have a process for that. We have a process for the harmonized standard developed in parallel with ISO, and we do have a quality check as well. We will talk about that later in the presentation. Yeah, thank you. Yes. HD is a harmonized document. It's not a European standard, so it's another type of deliverable. It looks like an EN, but it's another type of deliverable. TC64? Is it like TC64? Yeah. So it's a different type of beast, I would say. Yeah. So yeah, focusing now on the process. So I'm focusing on the very beginning of the process with this slide. And here we have the timelines for each step. So the CCMC quality check, new step, the 4 weeks for the technical body to address the comments from the quality check. Then the HAS assessment, 5 weeks. We had issues with the timeliness of the HAS assessment. Now we are back on track, and most of the assessment reports are delivered within the 35 days. And then once the assessment report is delivered, the technical body to address the comments from the HAS consultant, and as well to request a meeting with the HAS consultant. If you have a lack of compliant assessment, please contact the HAS consultant through EY to request a meeting with the HAS consultant to clarify the comments and to discuss the comments. Here it's important for the TC and for the work group to anticipate on the organization of the work group meeting so that a meeting can be already organized to discuss the outcome of the assessment. For the annexes, Catherine was talking about the annexes earlier. You know, for a harmonized standard, for a homegrown harmonized standard, you need to have an Annex Z, an Annex ZZ for Senelec, an Annex ZA for Sen. That is an annex that makes the link between the clauses of your standard and the essential requirement of the directive. This is mandatory, so please start preparing it as early as possible when you start preparing your draft, so that we have the annexes ready when you submit your document for the quality check and for the HAS assessment. And as well, the common checklist, it's a key element. It is mandatory for homegrown. You have to deliver together with your draft and the Annex Z, a filled-in common checklist to CCMC for the quality check. Any question about that? Yes.
This morning we learned that in this flex process, we have minimum 1 week. So this new process increases the minimum time for the flex process to 18 weeks.
Minimum 1 week for what, sorry?
In the flex process, we learned this morning that we have 1 week for A and a minimum of 6 weeks for E.
Oh, minimum. Okay.
So now
Yeah.
we have 18 weeks.
Yes, that's why I said if you can, when you plan your project at the beginning, it's better to plan for 50 weeks for part A to accommodate this timeline, and then 18 weeks for part B. And then at the end, if you are able to go faster in part B, you can reduce the time. But the whole idea of this new process is to focus the efforts at the beginning of the development, so that at the end, you have more chances of getting a compliant assessment and to proceed with the offering for the citation. Because what we saw in the previous process is that TCs, some technical bodies, most of them, were waiting quite late in the development to start the harmonization process. And because of that, they were failing. Because too many comments, too late, the draft was advanced too much and they could not change it. So the whole principle of this new process is to shift the focus and the efforts at the beginning. So more efforts, more time at the beginning, so that at the end, it can be easier. Yeah.
Because in our TC, and we got the case again today, non-compliant because the one normative reference was not available at the time of the assessment. It's not the job of the TC to make the normative reference available.
Yeah, please come to me with this case. We systematically raise it to EY. And it's not okay because the HAS consultant and EY, they have access to the normative references, and it's not a good reason to give a lack of compliance only because of that. If there are other comments, okay. But if it's only about that, it's not acceptable. So please come to us, we will raise it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, please come to me, we will raise it again to EY, but the HAS consultant have access to the normative references. And if there's an issue, normally EY can contact us and we fix it. It's not normal, it's not acceptable that you have such a comment in an assessment report here. Yeah. Every time. Almost 100%. Yeah, because it's the beginning. It's an early draft and it's normal. And like even with the quality check on the mature draft, you will request a HAS assessment, the mature draft assessment. We expect that 90 to 95% of the assessment will be not compliant, but it's normal. But again, the goal is to shift the effort at the beginning so that at the end, hopefully, we will have a compliant document. We are not yet there because, as I told you, the process started just 1 year ago. And because of the time it takes to develop a standard, normally early 2025, we will start to see projects that are reaching the formal vote stage, and then we will see. But for now, it's too soon.
One more question. For the Annex ZZ, do you also give recommendations there in this process?
Yes, we do. We are not technical experts. That's what makes it difficult. So we cannot be technical experts for LVD, for machinery, for health. So we are able to help you on a horizontal level. For example, if we sense that the Annex ZZ is not granular enough, we give a recommendation about consider giving more granularity into the Annex Z. Or we check that the template used is the good one. Things like that. Yeah.
One question about the Annex Z. If the IEC standard is not dated, what about the EM version? Should this version be dated or not?
So if you are in a parallel development, yes, you have the Annex ZD, Senelec, where you can date the undated normative references that are in the IEC text. And this is the purpose of the Annex ZD, yes. Yeah.
Especially EMC, if we refer to a standard which is not harmonized,
yeah,
we have no chance to be harmonized.
It's not true. You can use, you don't have to have a harmonized standard as a normative reference. It's not mandatory. And so it's not the topic of today, but specifically for that, when you're using a harmonized standard, the best practice is not only to refer to that standard, but to call the specific clause, because then you limit the scope of it and you limit the area where the HAS consultant could say, oh, this is not okay because this document is have undated normative references and things like that. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
It's on the quality check and we discuss them with the experts, but they don't agree on everything that was written. Can we proceed to inquiry in the vote onto the as consultant, or do we have to strictly comply with the quality check?
Well, the best is to explain why you disagree with the comments, but at the end, it's the technical body's responsibility. We are not drafting the standards, so we just give recommendations. But at the end, it's your responsibility. The content of the standard is your responsibility. So if you think that I mean, if you think the comment is not valid, please proceed. And it's the same for the HAS consultant. Huh? They can make comments, but at the end, you are responsible of the content of your document. And yes, about the assessment, when to request an assessment. So we quickly saw on the timeline, you can have a maximum of 4 assessments per work item. The mature draft, that is now mandatory. It used to be optional, but now mandatory. If the mature draft assessment is not compliant, you have the inquiry confirmatory assessment. And then for the formal vote stage, the pre-formal vote, and if not compliant, the last confirmatory assessment. The LCA, it's a complete assessment, considered the same as a pre-formal vote, for example. It's not possible to request an assessment on a published document. The European Commission can, when we offer a standard for citation, request a 5th assessment directly to the HAS consultant, but you will not see the outcome of this assessment. Yes. Yeah.
Now at IC level, we have the CDP.
Yes.
So is it possible to ask a second assessment on the stage?
No. 1 assessment per stage. Yeah. So you have to sense when is the best moment to ask it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I understand, but no, we unfortunately it's only 1 assessment per stage. Yeah. So now we will go to the harmonized standard in the international context. My part will be quick because most of the elements you saw this morning. Vienna Agreement, I will go very quick because I think you saw that this morning. These figures are not correct, I think. The ones you saw this morning are correct. So it's around 35% of harmonized standards CEN are developed in parallel with ISO. The sectors, volume-wise, the big winner here is machinery, huge volume. And then percentage-wise, it's more healthcare and chemicals for the sectors. Frankfurt Agreement, saw that this morning. Here, the proportion is higher than in the Vienna Agreement. Around 80% of the Senelec standard are identical to or based on IC publication. So in Senelec, there's a very strong coordination and very strong parallel work with IC. About the sectors, obviously, it's mostly electrotech and digital society that are under the Frankfurt Agreement. And now I will leave the floor to Mauro for the process itself. Yeah.
This one. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the floor. So after the introduction given by Frederick about the parallel project, I'm going to give a overview, more detailed about these parallel projects process. So they are based in 2 main factors, consensus building at European and international level, and strong communication and coordination between the European TCs and the international TCs. For harmonized standards, you have to have in mind that the same standard reference applies worldwide and as well provides presumption of conformity at the European to the European legislation. So for the parallel projects, the process it's similar to a non-harmonized, but on harmonized standards, as you already may understood from presentation from Frederick, there is a part that it's a parallel one where the harmonized standards it's submitted for assessment at the AS contractor, and this assessment is performed by AS consultants, At the end of the process, if the standard or the reference standard is compliant with the rules settled by the Commission can cite the reference. Sorry. So this new and because of facing some difficulties within the past to get the compliance ratio on the harmonized standards, mainly on parallel, there was it was agreed to apply a new process, and this new process is intended to improve the timely delivery of the harmonized standards, in this case parallel ones, as well to avoid the block standards before publication, and at the end to minimize the impact that the new process will have in the international project time frame. This new process will raise earlier awareness of candidate harmonized standards at ISO and IEC level. At the start of the CD consultation, that it's at early stage of development process, if there is any CD consultation, ISO and IEC secretary circulate the committee draft to CCMC. If certain conditions are met, this CD draft will be submitted for the quality check. As well, if other certain conditions are met, the CD assessment is possible, and this assessment report or outcome will be officially transmitted to the international TCs. This new process, as I already talked, only impacts the early stages, which means the CD stage.
Just one thing to comment about the process. So it said that when there's a CD stage at ISO and IEC, we will receive the CD to perform the quality check. It's implemented with ISO. We are still working on the practical operational implementation with IC. Same thing when we have an assessment report. We share it already with ISO, but we are working on the operational and practical implementation with IC.
So this new process, what settles? It's the new stage, that it's the CD or assessment, and as well the common or the CCMC quality check if there is a CD draft circulated. To understand what are the requirements to be possible to request a CCMC quality check, we have to understand the CD consultation time frame. We see that usually the default time frame for the CD consultation is 8 weeks. It sometimes can be extended to 12 weeks or even 16 weeks. And as well, we have to understand what is the time frame needed for the quality check, for the TC to revise the draft, and the CD assessment. So for the quality check, we need 2 weeks to perform the quality check internally. Then we give 2 weeks for the TC to revise the standard, addressing the comments raised in the CCMC quality check. And afterwards, the CD assessment takes maximum 5 weeks. And as we can see, there are 9 weeks in total just for this process. Therefore, it's important that we know if the CD consultation takes 8 weeks or more, because if it takes less than 8 weeks, it's impossible to perform the CCM quality check, and therefore the assessment is directly requested to the AS consultant. So on ISO level, we have 3 points that need to be fulfilled. So the quality check is it's able to be performed. So the elements should be provided by the CNTC, the European elements. The European elements shall not be included in the ISO CD text, because as you probably will know, sometimes it's possible to, or if it's sometimes it's possible to draft the European annexes in the same document as the main document. So therefore, it's impossible for the TC to address the comments after our CCMC quality check. And as well, as I told before, if the CD consultation is above 8 weeks, then we have time to perform the CCMC quality check. Now we have here a table that summarizes all the conditions. we can see here that it's the CCMC quality check is only performed or be able to be performed if there is a ISO CD draft, if the Annex Z or the European elements are not included in the CD text, and as well if the CD consultation takes more than 8 weeks. The CD assessment is always performed as soon as the CD text is available and circulated to the European TC. On IEC level, it's a bit simpler or easier because the European elements are always developed on a parallel document. Therefore, the TC is always able to address the comments from the CCMC quality check if there is a CD draft circulated. So for IEC, only 2 requirements are needed to perform the CCMC quality check, that the European elements are provided by the Senelec TC, and as well that the CD consultation is again above 8 weeks. This is a table that summarizes the process for IEC. As you can see, it's simpler. So the CCMC quality check can be performed if there is a CD text, and as well if the CD consultation is wider than 8 weeks. The CD assessment is always performed as soon as the IC CD text is provided. So the general key points that we have to remember is that the process must start as early as possible. So the European TC is invited to closely follow up the work at international level and develop the annexes and the European elements. This new process that I already explained only impacts the early stages, which means the CD stage, and if there is a CD stage, because sometimes there isn't. And as well, the communication is one of the main topics or aspects that you must remember, because this will create a good liaison between the international level and the European level. Just for the last, we recommend the use of the common checklist for parallel projects. It's not mandatory, however, it's highly recommended to fulfill with the rules that the European Commission is setting. Few useful links, and I will give the floor to my colleague, Anda. If you have any questions first. Yes.
Parallel process at any time, or are there specific parts of the process where you can end the parallel process with the international and the European?
Why would you leave the parallel process?
See, for example, that would be better just to do an international standard or just to do a European standard?
So I think this is not necessarily linked to harmonized standards. I think probably a general question, but normally when you start a new work item as a parallel development, I don't think there's a way to, I don't know actually, there's a way to escape the parallel process. I know you can, for example, for Senelec, you can decide, because by default, Senelec, you have the parallel development in the Frankfurt Agreement. When a work item is created at IEC, it's automatically created at Senelec, except if it's exempted from a parallel procedure. But otherwise, if you start as a parallel process, I don't know actually.
If you start in parallel, either you go on, or you go until the end, and if you decide to stop, then you will kill your work item, and then you will have to start again at European level. But you will kill, I mean, the work item will be stopped in the middle. So, but it's not so often that we do that, but it's feasible.
Hi, everyone. So in the upcoming slides, I will talk about CCMC quality check, what we do actually. And why we do it, because there are a lot of reasons of lack of compliance. And as you can see here, we received recently from Ernst & Young the reasons of the top 10 of reasons of non-compliance. As you see, the first stop is Annex Z. So definitely we have to work together to make sure the Annex Z is properly drafted. And we shall give more granularity of the annex to make sure that there is a connection with the essential safety requirements. Then on the top two, there are tests and risks, followed by ambiguities in the requirements. So we have to pay attention when we draft the standard to make sure that it's clearly specific, said that is a requirement when you linked to an essential safety requirement in the Annex Z. I will. So, as Fred and my colleague Mauro said, quality check on the homegrown side is only performed during the two stages, the mature draft stage and pre-formal vote stage. How we do this is we start with the common checklist, which is used by TC as a self-assessment first. Then it's used by us again to do a self-assessment as well for the draft. And the last stage is also used by HAS consultants. So we all three stakeholders, we use the same common checklist so we can have a common understanding what is required to have a compliant assessment at the end. As CCMC, we focus only on the IR3, International Regulation Part 3. Also normative references, because it was a question about normative references. And also we check the Annex ZA and ZZ. As Frederick mentioned earlier, our main goal is to support you, technical bodies, in drafting the harmonized standard, but we are not experts to say exactly how you can draft your standard, so we can bring only recommendations towards you. Our main focus is to increase the compliance at the end, so we can cite the document, the standard, in the official journal. As I said earlier, we have this common checklist that is used by all the three stakeholders, which is recently added, and we had it's used as a mandatory at homegrown, but as and is strongly recommended during the parallel work. The mandatory quality check as at homegrown stage is sorry, I will rephrase. The mandatory for homegrown draft harmonized is considered starting with October 2023. So if your project starts earlier than October 2023, there is no, we can perform the quality check, but it will be considered voluntary quality check. So this is not under the innovative process, but we still can help you providing guidance and recommendations. So please feel free to ask, even if your project is not under the innovative process. I left here two links to SendBoss and Senelec Boss, where you can find a lot of forms and templates. So please feel free to access both links. It's very useful for you. Also, you can find a lot of guidance. So guidance for Annex Z, guidance for Annex ZZ as well, how to draft for each sector, of course. How it looks like the common checklist, it's made by three parts. The part A, where you can find the introduction, like information of the project, what is the standard reference, what is the work item reference, the stage, the legislation supported, what is the standardization request, information regarding the technical body, and of course, if it's a parallel or homegrown project. And we have certain criteria that are followed by, as I said, by you as a starting point, as a self-assessment. So you can pass through all of them, not only the part A. This is our recommendation. And we also start to check criteria that are linked to the project, if it's homegrown or parallel as well. The part B2 is mostly used by the HAS consultant, but again, we also check during the CCMC quality check, and we are encouraged you as well to check what is required by the HAS consultant, because we do, as I said, we do the same check for, we use the same list. So it's not different. There is no difference. And here, the HASC consultant, we provide you at the end an assessment report. And this is the part where they fill in like if it's compliance, if it's conditional compliance, and if it's lack of compliance. So they can justify and they will tick the boxes. As well, per each criteria, they will fill in if it's fulfilled, not fulfilled, or not applicable, depending on the case by case. And of course, they will fill in if it's what is the clause or subclause in the standard reference. And they also add some comments and justification from their side. And later on, when this assessment report, it will be shared with you, you will have to revert back by complementing your observations, if you are agree or disagree with their comments. I think that's it, if you have questions. Yes.
So that's about in the previous slide, the B3.
Yes.
Who has to fill that? Because you see a common criteria, you see a base on the ESO.
Yes, I will explain. So because we use this common checklist, all three stakeholders at the beginning at mature draft, first you can do as a TC, you do a self-assessment and you pass through all the criterias and to check, and you have to assess your own standard if fulfills the terminology, for instance. So you can put fulfill or not fulfilled. Maybe you have other comments for us when you will send it towards us. As well, CCMC will do the same assessment. We will assess your standard if it's compliant and if it fulfills all the criteria here. And as well, the HASC consultant at the end, he will fill in their comments. So everyone will do the same assessment. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, short comment about that. So you have the part B1 and the part B3, they look alike. The part B3 goes more into details and the part B1 covers at a higher level, but then in the part B3, you go more into the details. So when you're doing your self-assessment, normally you have only to cover part B1, but we invite you to check B3 as well, because you have more granularity and you have more topics to check. And the HASC consultant will answer on the B3.
Now, my question was actually about your first sheet where you showed that the majority of non-compliances in the judgment is in the Annex C, the above line. And you talked about the granularity of this Annex C, but what would be the reason of this fails? I mean, I can also imagine that if I look to essential requirements in directives, some are quite crisp and smart, specific medical setup. But some, like LVD, are so high level that isn't then the missing point of granularity, isn't that caused by the directive or regulation itself? What's your opinion about that? Did you investigate that?
Yeah, so the granularity was just an example, and the granularity is something we can cover in the quality check. I mean, we can have a sensation, a perception about it. But as I was saying, we are not technical experts. You are the technical experts, and we can only give horizontal and high level recommendations about the Annex Z. But it's true that most of the issues today in the Annex Z are highly technical. And we cannot help you with that. And it's highly technical, and depending on the sectors, some sectors are okay, they can easily draft the Annex Z, and they don't have issues with that. Some other sectors, like EMCD, for example, it's much more difficult. So this really depends on the sector, and it's highly technical. So we can help until a certain level for the Annex Z, but most of the time, it's, I would say, between the technical body and the HASC consultant. And when I say it's super important that when you receive an assessment, you request a meeting with the HASC consultant, because some comments related to the Annex Z, you need to have a discussion with the HASC consultant so that he can explain what he means. And you can explain as well what you meant in your standard. Yeah.
Yes.
How you can help us with that?
because the track also is also part influenced by satellite line. And the essential requirements could be by the consultants or by the commission themselves, so that standardized is no one to address in those settings. Bring them forward without standardizing a big guess what are the essential requirements.
It's a good point. So before the standardization request is approved, yes, you should check carefully what is written inside, and if you have any comments, that's the right moment to raise it. That's why, as Catherine was saying, it's really key that you, I mean, not you personally, but all stakeholders carefully check what is written in the draft standardization request before it's approved. Yeah. Okay, and then I will take the last point, but it will be very quick. I think you saw something this morning about air deviations. So here it's just an information in the context of harmonized standard. Please try to avoid them. Simple. Or if you really need to have air deviations, assess the impact of the air deviation, and if possible, try to have it in clause that are not supporting the presumption of conformity, because as you can understand, a harmonized standard is a standard that applies everywhere in Europe, and an air deviation is to address a specific law of a country. So if it's in a clause that is supporting the presumption of conformity, we might have an issue there, and your reference might not be cited in the official journal. So if you need to have an air deviation, please try to identify the need as early as possible, and please try to have that clause impacted by the air deviation outside of the Annex Z. Voilà, just that. And that's it. So yeah, some useful links. We did quite a lot of webinars recently. So the webinar about the new processes, both for the homegrown and the parallel. Webinar on the common checklist where we present more in detail the common checklist. There was recently a webinar about the Annex Z organized in September. And there's the same link, but on the expert platform, you can find the Senelec link as well. So don't hesitate to go to your expert area, to the Sen and to the Senelec boss. There's a lot of guidance documents, training content. Don't hesitate to engage with your CCMC project manager. And ultimately, if you have questions, come to us. We are really happy to help and to support you. And if you have questions, please go. Otherwise, it's time for a well-deserved coffee break. Thank you.
So, coffee break until 3:30. Please be there at 3:30 because we have still several interesting presentations on the agenda. So 3:30. Thank you. Merci.
One example. If we have project, we have a preliminary work.